and we have our special guest today, Kavita Maharaj. Hello, Kavita.
Hi, Kavita. It's good to be here.
Thank you. And so you are an artist.
When did your fascination with Star Trek begin? Because it seems that Star Trek is the focal point of your art.
Well, my fascination with Star Trek began when I was a child. To be honest, I don't remember the precise point. It actually seems to have been there my entire life. And it's interesting because it's been there my entire life. I'm even curious as to actually what triggered it off initially. But yeah, it's been there since I was a kid. So, 40-something years to date now. Now you know how old I am.
And where did you grow up?
I was born in Canada, in Toronto, but I actually grew up in the Caribbean, in Trinidad. It's the Caribbean island that's southernmost, and it's just off the coast of Venezuela. So I spent the first 13 years of my life in Trinidad, and then I returned back to Canada.
And so your studio now is based in Canada, correct?
I actually am now on Vancouver Island, which is on the west coast, so on the coast where California is. I'm just above California there.
Okay, and so when did you know that you wanted to be an artist?
Well, again, just like with Star Trek, it's been there all my life, and it was interesting because in terms of my skill level, I'm using the word skill level here. It was something that was noticed when I was very young, and when I say skill level, I'm talking about the ability to render something in a more realistic manner. While I can still draw a princess like what I did when I was a kid, it's not realistic in that way. I do remember the first time, people started to talk about my art. I was about 8 years old, and I had this thing with drawing hands. I would put a pencil in my hand and hold it, and I would use my right hand to draw what this looked like to me. So, since being a child, this was something that really interested me. How to make things look the way they looked. That was the thing that interests me. And then when I was about to go off to university, I had to make some choices because I was one of those people who did, the arts, the sciences, the languages, and whatnot. And I had two artistic veins that really brought me joy. One was singing, and the other one was art, as in drawing and painting. And I had to make a choice, and I chose fine art as the direction I wanted to go in.
And so why Spock? You do a lot of paintings of Spock.
Mm-hmm. So the reason that Spock is, I would say Spock is my favorite character. I really would. Although I have to say something. I just finished a piece on Sarek, Spock's father. And when I decided I was going to paint Sarek, I decided I was going to write a blog post as well on Sarek. And so that blog post is now up on the Retrospect Studios website. And so, in order to write this blog post, I started doing research into Sarek. And, I mentioned that Spock is my favorite character, but I've really kind of developed quite an interest in Sarek as a character as well. And for a lot of the same reasons, the reasons that I love Spock and now I'm really, really interested in Sarek is that I find them both to, in a lot of ways, be noble characters, yet characters who are imperfect. And what I mean by that is that they're both, and I know they're both Vulcan characters, but I'm going to use this term that they're both very human characters. They're both fallible characters. They both struggle with the same things that you and I will struggle with in our life, and they don't always hit it, 100%. And I think that's valuable to me, that they don't, and yet they really put forth effort to be the noblest form that they can be and to be true to their belief systems. Whatever those belief systems are. So they're honest and they deal with themselves. And that's something that speaks to me as a person. So that's actually mainly what my fascination with Spock is. And now my interest in Sarek is.
That's interesting because, yeah, I always like Spock and Sarek and all the Vulcans too. Well, since beginning your series, you've ventured into other Trek characters too. So how do you choose your character and how do you approach a piece?
Well, there's always got to be something about that character that speaks to me, a conversation I want to have. And I use that word conversation because that's how I see my paintings. My paintings are a conversation I'm having about this character. They're not just a rendering of that character. I find my mind is not interested enough in simply rendering a character. And while I did say earlier, and I still mean this, that I'm very interested in what makes something look a particular way, present a particular way, um, that's not enough in my paintings for me. I need to be very interested in what makes something a particular way. And what I mean by that is I'm interested in what creates that character. What is that character's story? What is the essence? And again, it goes back to nobility. What is the noblest essence of that character? I give you an example here. I am very interested in painting an image of Khan, and obviously I'm looking at Khan Noonien Singh as it was portrayed in the original series, and then in The Wrath of Khan by Ricardo Montalban. And while I'm very interested in portraying him and painting him, I don't feel like I want to paint him right now, as in he's not my next painting. He might be actually my painting after. I'm kind of feeling he's my painting after. And I'm bringing that up because I need to decide not only that I'm interested in the character, but I want to have that conversation right now. And I feel like I want to have his conversation after the next painting because I need to be very involved in sitting down, paying attention to the character, uh, delving deeply into the noblest part of them and what drives them when I'm painting. I have to admit as well, obviously, I'm a visual artist, and so I am inspired by visual. And I've noticed that particular features of a person will also interest me. And I'll use the word excite me. So I tend to like angular features. Hence Leonard Nimoy's features and, even Mark Leonard's features. Ricardo Montalban has a lot of those angular features. I like the angular features quite a bit. I find that the softer features usually do not draw me in as much. That's not to say I wouldn't be interested in that character if they were a very interesting character with a lot of internal motivation. So that's how I tend to choose the character. I look for one that excites me. And it's funny because right now I've just finished my Sarek. So, of course, I'm sitting and I'm deciding who I'm going to approach next. And what I do is I go through in my mind. I look at photographs, first of all, to see, does any one of them visually interest me? And then I start flipping through them in my mind. And I'm looking for an excited response where my mind goes, yes, I want to do that. Yes, I want to talk about that. So being interested isn't enough. I have to actually be excited about the conversation. So that's what I'm doing right now to decide on who's next.
It makes sense.
I love how you talk, the way you're into the characters and what drives them. I mean, it's like a storyteller, the way people who write stories are interested in characters. And so that's why your pictures are so deep and how they're so full of life, because you're interested in that part of the characters as well as their physical features.
Well, there's always got to be something about that character that speaks to me, a conversation I want to have. And I use that word conversation because that's how I see my paintings. My paintings are a conversation I'm having about this character. They're not just a rendering of that character. I find my mind is not interested enough in simply rendering a character. And while I did say earlier, and I still mean this, that I'm very interested in what makes something look a particular way, present a particular way, that's not enough in my paintings for me. I need to be very interested in what makes something a particular way. And what I mean by that is I'm interested in what creates that character. What is that character's story? What is the essence? And again, it goes back to nobility. What is the noblest essence of that character? I give you an example here. I am very interested in painting an image Khan, and obviously I'm looking at Khan Noonien Singh as it was portrayed in the original series, and then in The Wrath of Khan by Ricardo Montalban. And while I'm very interested in portraying him and painting him, I don't feel like I want to paint him right now, as in he's not my next painting. He might be actually my painting after. I'm kind of feeling he's my painting after. And I'm bringing that up because I need to decide not only that I'm interested in the character, but I want to have that conversation right now. And I feel like I want to have his conversation after the next painting, because I need to be very involved in sitting down, paying attention to the character, delving deeply into the noblest part of them and what drives them when I'm painting. I have to admit as well, obviously I'm a visual artist, and so I am inspired by visual, and I've noticed that particular features of a person will also interest me, and I'll use the word excite me. So I tend to like angular features. So, hence Leonard Nimoy's features and, even Mark Leonard's features. Ricardo Montalban has a lot of those angular features. I like the angular features quite a bit. I find that the softer features usually do not draw me in as much. That's not to say I wouldn't be interested in that character if they were a very interesting character with a lot of internal motivation. So that's how I tend to choose the character. I look for one that excites me. And it's funny because right now I've just finished my Sarek. So, of course, I'm sitting and I'm deciding who I'm going to approach next. And what I do is I go through in my mind. I look at photographs, first of all, to see, does any one of them visually interest me? And then I start flipping through them in my mind. And I'm looking for an excited response where my mind goes, yes, I want to do that. Yes, I want to talk about that. So being interested isn't enough. I have to actually be excited about the conversation. So that's what I'm doing right now to decide on who's next. And so my father's a yogi, and I'm a yogi as well. And my father's a traditionally practicing yogi. And what that means is that he lives his life according to yoga philosophy. In my Sarek blog, I actually mentioned my father because it's quite pertinent to the character, because I said, for all intents and purposes, my father's a monk. And, right down to the oath of celibacy, which he obviously took after I was born. But I mention that because I've lived my life where the philosophy by which you live is incredibly important. Your commitment to your philosophy, your commitment to analyzing your life, to critically thinking about your life and your own motivations and why you do what you do, so that you can differentiate between your ego and the higher calling in yourself. That's been part of my life since I was a child. And it's still the main driving force of my existence. And so I tend to look at my characters that way. I look at them and I go, what is your main driving force in your existence? Why are you alive? What is important to you about life at the end of the day?
That makes sense. Because we see the philosophies that are found in yoga oftentimes translate to Star Trek. And when we
absolutely, especially the Vulcan characters, they're very stoic, and yoga is a very stoic belief system.
And you're constantly willing to make adjustments to better yourself. And in the Star Trek universe, it's about growth through small changes that make big differences.
Yes.
So as art collectors, we notice that you have a variety of sizes of your pieces, and so it really touches on everyone's budget as well as space needs. Can you tell us how large your pieces are, and how does that relate to the print sizes that you offer?
Absolutely. So the original paintings that I do, they're all 1 by 3 feet. So they're 12 inches by 36 inches. And as a result, when I was deciding on the print sizes, I decided that I wanted to have a full-size piece that I could offer to people. And it actually is because I have the full-size pieces and I appreciate them so much. And I thought to myself, I really want to make sure that if somebody wants the experience of having the full-size pieces the way I do, that they have that ability, they have that opportunity to get the full-size pieces. I actually didn't want to feel like I was being selfish. That's the truth of it. I didn't want to feel like I was holding on to these, not just these pieces for myself, but even the experience of having it in this original size that I get so much joy out of. And that's why I offered the large pieces. So the large pieces are the same size as the originals, which they're 12 by 36 in terms of the image being printed. And then, of course, there's a bit of a white border around it. So there's a 1-inch border on 3 sides and a 1.5-inch border at the bottom so that I can sign and number the pieces for each person. So that's the large size. And then the smaller size is actually, it's with the border on it. It's 10 by 26.5. So basically it's 8 by 24. And that small size isn't, it's not tiny. It's actually a decent size. And that's the one that most people have gone for. But we've definitely had some people purchasing the larger ones. And they really do create some impact, the large ones. But so it's 2 sizes that I tend to offer. For future seasons, I'm going to decide as we're coming along if I want to offer the large sizes, continue to offer the large sizes, or if they're just going to be the small sizes. I haven't quite decided yet. But that's why, specifically for budget and size, those are the smaller ones, and specifically so that others can have the same experience that I have with my pieces, the larger ones are available.
That's excellent. Okay, and so what is the approval process with CBS like?
Because you're officially approved by CBS, is that correct?
Yes, I am. And so that was quite an adventure. It is quite an adventure. So I should back up with that question, actually, in terms of what the approval process is like, because when I created an Instagram account originally. At one point in time, and I did it anonymously when I first started. And the reason I did it anonymously, I didn't put my picture up there, I didn't put my name. And the reason I did it this way was initially when I started putting out my pieces, none of them were for sale, obviously, but I was doing it anonymously so that people wouldn't follow me on Instagram because they knew me. I've got, a lot of students, being a yoga teacher, I've got a lot of students, and I didn't want them to see that I had this Instagram account up, and so they would follow it because, it's Kavita, and we like Kavita, and we're going to do this because, we like her. I wanted them to look at the work and go, wow, that work really speaks to me. And so I'm going to follow this account, not knowing who it is. I'm going to follow this account because the work really speaks to me. So I started doing that initially. And the short version of this is that, a number of people started to ask to purchase the pieces. And I kept telling them over and over, each person individually, I would say, thank you. But these are labors of love and they weren't done to sell and whatnot. But then they started happening over and over and over in a very concentrated way where I suddenly went, okay, it actually brings me a lot of joy that people are getting this much joy out of the pieces. And I don't want to feel like I'm holding on to these just for myself. I've been sharing with them over Instagram. I don't want to feel like, I'm the only one who gets to have these in my home now. And so then I thought, okay. And so I decided that if I was going to offer the prints, I was going to want to do this either through someone who was licensed or I was going to need to get licensed myself. So long story short, I eventually thought I'm going to have to talk to CBS. And I didn't actually want to talk to CBS. They're a big company and, put you on their radar. And so I eventually did get onto their website and I sent them a message. And I honestly at the time didn't think they'd give me the time of day. And within less than 12 hours, I got an email back from the rep in Toronto in Canada. And they said, basically, how can we help you? And I told them who I was and what was happening and what I wanted. And then I sent them 4 photos of, different pieces. And within a month, they had offered me a contract, which was shockingly fast for me. But things slow down a little bit in terms of all the, the I's that you've got to dot and the T's that you've got to cross, because it's a big contract that you're looking at, and there's a lot of detail in there that you need to be mindful of. And so there's going back and forth with lawyers. So, that's the process to getting licensed. So once I was licensed, then I had to actually get approval for each piece that I wanted to offer. So I'm officially licensed by CBS. And my license actually is for 2 years, because they limit their contract. So my license is for 2 years. The idea being that in 2 years I get to decide, and they get to decide as well, based on how well the prints have sold, etc. If we both want to renew that contract. And then, so in the meantime, I actually need to apply to them every time I want to offer a print. So and that approval process, the last time it took about 2 months, I would say. It's because you have to go through several rounds of approvals where you send in an image online and they have to approve the initial image. And then once they've approved the initial image, it goes up to the next stage of approval. And at that point in time, you have to send them samples so that they can actually look at the piece, because they're interested in what are the colors actually like, what's the quality of the material, what does this pretty much, they in their mind it might be partially finished, but because of the fact that I only offer things that I've already completed, they get the finished sample at that point. And there are 4 different people who are approving each of these stages. So there's legal that's approving it, there's a financial that's approving it, and then there are 2, there's the CBS rep who's approving it, and then there's Susan Nimoy. So she's actually looking at each of the pieces as well. So Susan Nimoy, if Leonard Nimoy was still alive, it would be Leonard Nimoy. But Susan Nimoy is actually looking at each piece and giving feedback and approval because she represents the Nimoy estate. So you're looking for each stage at approval from the Nimoy estate, approval from CBS, approval from their accounting, basically financial, and approval from their legal. I've had since every so often when I'm finishing a piece, it happens relatively frequently when I finish a piece that someone contacts me and says, "I'd love to buy a print of this piece. Do you offer it?" And because there's this approval process, I can't say yes. I have to actually say, the piece has just been finished. I need to professionally photograph it, and then I have to go through this approval process. I can't offer anything that I've just finished because it needs to go through all of this.
Yeah, that's a long process.
It is a long process. In fact, I was just talking to the licensing person on Friday, and my intention was, I'd like to bring out a second season just before Christmas. And I'd said to her, based on the approval process last time, I said, I guess I should start the approval process in August. And she said to me, you know what, start it as soon as you're able to. So I'm actually going to be sitting down in the near future and deciding what I want to offer for season 2, even though that's not coming for several months.
So let me ask, so for Susan Nimoy, is she just approving the Spock pictures or all of them?
Right. So she's only involved for the Spock picture. So that would mean that if I decide, let's say, to offer the I've got a Sulu. So let's say I decide to offer the Sulu, then that would go to George Takei himself for approval because he's still alive, so he's in control of his estate. If I decided to offer my Nichelle Nichols, it would go to her as well. If I decide to offer my Scotty, it would go to James Doohan's family, whether it be his wife or his kids. I'm not sure who's in charge of his estate. So whoever is in charge of the estate oversees the approval for the likeness of that person.
Oh, that's interesting. So so they each get to approve their own pictures.
Yes.
Oh, okay. And so how do you release your prints to the public?
So I was mentioning season two. I actually am releasing them in seasons, and so what can sometimes be a little confusing to people is because, of course, we're talking about a TV show initially that had 3 seasons. They can think, oh, well, that means that season one has images that relate to the first season of the show, and season two has images that relate to the second season. But that's not the case. In fact, if you take a look at the Retrospect Studios website, at the prints being offered for season one, you'll notice that there's at least one image in there that is from season two, and that's the mirror Spock. And then you'll notice that there's at least one image in there that's from the motion picture. So the seasons are really just referring to the first grouping that comes out, or the second grouping that comes out, or the third grouping that comes out. So I started off with the first season offering 6 different prints. And what's been interesting with that one is I hadn't thought about this, but it does make it a little harder for fans to choose, because they come on and they go, oh, I want this one, but I want this one too. Oh, but what about this one? And
But that's good for you. I mean, because you do so many that people want.
yes, exactly. So, so in a way, each season that comes out, I guess it'll make it a little harder for them, because each season that comes out, now they have more options. But I have had some fans who have purchased, more than one print, and they've actually said to me, okay, I've purchased these 2 or these 3 prints, but I actually want these other prints as well. So they've got kind of a collection in mind that they are after, and they are collecting them as they're coming out, whether there be 2 from this season, or 1 from this season, or 3 from this season, knowing that in a future season there probably going to be pieces that they want as well.
So it sounds like you just do original series characters, right? Not any of the other Star Trek shows?
Yes, at this point in time, I'm just doing original series characters. I watched Star Trek: The Next Generation, and I quite liked Star Trek: The Next Generation. I quite enjoyed it. I also watched a bit of Deep Space Nine, and a bit of Voyager, but my paintings come from a place of deep love and meaning to me, and the original series is the one that really triggered off deep love and meaning for me.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and that's why I've continued to focus on it. I have had fans asking me, "Oh, can you do this character? Can you do that character? Can you do the other character?" And I'm always happy to hear who it is that they want to see, but I've had to maintain. I'm going to refer to it this way, as a kind of a purity of intent for myself as to what motivates me, and I've had to remember to go back to that process that I talked about, go through my mind and go, what conversation do I want to have? And the reason I've done that is because that is what makes, as you mentioned, that's what makes my pieces have depth to them. That's what brings me joy. That's what gives the conversation depth. That's what gives meaning to the work for me. So I have to remind myself, while I want to make fans happy, that I have to first and foremost do each painting because I am deeply interested in it.
So where are some of the places around the globe that your pieces have ended up?
Oh, well, they have ended up that they've gone to several places across Canada. So BC, Alberta, Ontario. One is on Wolfe Island, Ontario, which is kind of neat. They've gone to places down in the States. So Georgia, Ray has one actually. He's got the first print from the Pure Logic image, actually. So Georgia, California, a few in California, North Carolina, New York. So this is kind of me going off my memory. It's gone to Scotland, Germany, Finland, Australia. So it's really exciting for me to see them go across the globe like this. And so I've actually got a little map, and every time another print goes out, I add that person, that location to this map, and then I post the map because I find it exciting to see them go out across the globe. The other thing I do is I ask those who have purchased the pieces if they wouldn't mind, once they have framed up their pieces. I love seeing what they do with the pieces. There's something gratifying about seeing the fans, their vision, their artistic vision with the piece. And when I say their artistic vision, how they choose the type of frame they choose, the matting they choose, if they choose matting, the place in which they hang their piece, all of those things are artistic vision, and I love seeing their artistic vision interact with my artistic vision to see what is this thing together, what does it become with that myself and that fan together. And so I've asked people who've purchased, once they get their pieces framed and hung, to send me pictures, and then I post those actually for others to see. So I think fans have been excited to see the framed pieces. I also think it's for those who have either been considering purchasing or have purchased but haven't received their print yet. It actually allows them to see the possibilities as to what they could do with their pieces, and that excites them as well.
That's excellent. So Star Trek fans and art collectors, we're going to include this information in our show notes on our Facebook page, as well as any other places that we post this. But please tell us your studio name and how we can contact you, or how any art collectors or fans can contact you.
Absolutely. So the studio is Retrospect Studios, and you can find it at retrospectstudios.ca, so www.retrospectstudios.ca. And when you go onto the website, you'll notice that there are a few links up top, and in terms of finding the actual prints that are available, you want to go to the Collect page. So you'll see the blog page, the reviews page, and that type of thing. You want to go to the Collect page, and you'll see the pieces that are actually available for sale at that point. We also have a Facebook page, and that's facebook.com/retrospectstudios.art. So you can find us there as well.
Thank you. And so we will be seeing you at Neutral Zone Studios Fan Appreciation Weekend, and that's coming up Memorial Day weekend in Kingsland, Georgia.
Yes, I'm very much looking forward to meeting both of you there.
All right, thanks for joining us.
My pleasure, and thank you.
Thanks for listening. Make sure you hit that subscribe button and join our Facebook group. Live long, and may the Force be with you. Nanu Nanu.